Hi, I'm Amanda, and I should probably be reading, especially since today I'm talking about 25 books I'm hoping to read in the year 2025. Welcome back to my channel. This video may be entirely too ambitious. I have some concerns. If you've watched any of my other content talking about last year, you will have already seen that while I read 78 or 79 books last year, only 20 of them were print, novel, short story collection books. The rest were graphic novels, comics, manga, which are a bit faster and easier to read. And today I'm going to be talking about 25 books I'm hoping to read this year. So, is this folly? We'll see. I'm a little nervous about it, but I'm trying to look at it more as books I want to prioritize and not something I should feel bad about if I don't accomplish. We'll see. The motivation behind this list is my husband has recently gotten into bullet journaling, and a few years ago I started to try my hand at bullet journaling, and I was looking through one of my old bullet journal. I found a 22 for 2022 list, and I had gone through and written down 22 books from my home library that I had physical copies of that I wanted to read in 2022. And I read 3 of them. So, didn't do very well on that list, and those books have been sitting in my library since. So I decided that in order to make an updated version of that for 2025, what better place to start than all the books I didn't read in 2022. What I believe my goals were when I made the list in 2022 were to read more books from authors I had previously read and enjoyed, to read books that had been sitting on my shelf a long time that I had been really excited about but then hadn't picked up, and to read some of the books that I've heard so much about, I've been recommended so many times, like these why haven't I read it yet books. I wanted to read some of those, as well as some nonfiction books. I wanted to read more nonfiction, so I put those on the list as well. I've got sort of quick categories to introduce to kind of go through them. I have them sort of divided. We'll see how it goes. First group I'll talk about is books from authors I had read before. One of the only books I read from that 3 of my 2022 list was A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. So to replace this one on the list, I'm putting in The Last Graduate, which is book 2. I haven't read this book since 2022, and while I still remember some of it, in order to read this one, I'm probably going to read this one again, and hopefully the 3rd one in the series, which I also own and haven't read yet. So you can see that this is already looking to be like a more than 25 book challenge. This is already shaping up to be biting off more than I can chew. But we're gonna do the best we can, darn it. So this is the Scholomance series. I really liked this first one. I don't know why I didn't immediately pick up the next one to read it. Following along with that one, another book I will probably have to reread is the first book in the Six of Crows duology. I've read the first one, I've never read the second one. I loved Six of Crows. When I read Six of Crows, I was absolutely enthralled by the world. I loved the characters. I wished that everyone was talking about it, and no one in my social circles was, and I was so frustrated. I wish I had BookTube then, because I know Six of Crows is well loved. So, Crooked Kingdom's on here. I haven't read the second one. I know I need to, and like The Deadly Education, I will probably end up rereading the first Six of Crows in order to complete the duology. Other books from authors I've read before and want to read more of. We have another book by Leigh Bardugo, like Six of Crows. I have the Shadow and Bone series. I'd like to try the first one, see if I enjoy this series as well. I watched the Netflix show, but I've heard certain aspects of the Netflix show are better than the book, so we'll see. I, of course, loved the Six of Crows bits in the show, and I'm absolutely gutted it got canceled. So I'd like to read this series, see if I like it, see if I don't, read more in the Grishaverse, see what happens. I also have What Alice Forgot by Liane Moriarty. I really enjoyed Big Little Lies by this author, so this is the other book that we bought from her. I'd like to read more of her books and see if they land as well as Big Little Lies did. Next, I've got a little set of nonfiction books. I've got Good Morning, Good Night by Lin-Manuel Miranda, which I believe is just a series of tweets that he did as little pep talks for like, good morning, here's a little thing, good night, here's a little thing. I really enjoy Lin-Manuel Miranda's work. This just seemed like a sweet little book. I think I got it as a gift one year for Christmas, so I'd just like to read it and maybe have something light and motivational to read. I went to grad school for forensic linguistics, and I have 2 linguistic books that I haven't read that I would like to. I've got Because Internet by Gretchen McCullough, Understanding New Rules of the Language, all about how the internet has changed the way we talk. And then I have Watching TV with a Linguist. I like these like pop culture kind of ways you can dissect language. I'm really excited about reading this. I've had this for so long, I'm really bummed I haven't found a reason to pick it up. So I'm really hoping to get more into some of my linguistic books and really get back into that thing that I just love. Moving on, my next stack of books is that category of why haven't I read this yet? I've got Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. This is actually a copy I bought in Japan, so I had to have bought this pre-2011, and I still haven't read it. I just watched the movie for the first time earlier this month. I at least now have some context over how Howl's Moving Castle is, the story. I've heard the two are fairly different, but have that same heart. Next, I have The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. This is another one I've heard a lot about. My husband has read it. Lots of booktubers I follow have read it and loved it. There's no reason why I shouldn't read it and hopefully love it. Next, I have this little collection of Lovecraft tales. I actually borrowed this from my dad. It comes in this nice, like, slipcover. It is just a collection of Lovecraft stories. I really enjoy the role-playing game Call of Cthulhu, and I like cosmic horror as a genre, so I'd like to read some more of kind of where it started. This book contains some of the more classic Cthulhu stories, Call of Cthulhu, Shadow over Innsmouth, Mountains of Madness. They're all in here. I'd like to read it and see where the stories came from to better familiarize myself with the cosmic horror. Next, I have Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. This is another one I picked up because I've heard it so well recommended. It seems like a modern classic. It's one I really need to read, and I'm sure I will enjoy. In a similar vein, I have The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. A little bit of a chonker, a little bit worried about that on this list, but I've heard really good things about this. I'd like to read this, and if I love it, continue the series. It's another one that I've just heard so much about, and I bought it. I need to read it. My next stack is books that had been on my shelf for a while and I just hadn't read, even back in 2022. So it's been 3 more years since I was looking at these books going, wow, I really need to get around to reading them. So the first one is The Library at Mount Char. I actually started this probably around 2017, but that is also when I had my first child. So I think this is just one of those that absolutely got caught up in me going 12 different directions at once, and this fell by the wayside and I just haven't gotten back to it. I didn't get too far into it, but I remember enjoying what I read, and this is one of my husband's favorite books, so I really need to get on this and read this so I can talk about it with him. Next, I've got We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. This is one I think I picked up at a Hastings when it was on super discount. Heard a lot about it. It's time to read it. Next, I have Princess Academy by Shannon Hale. I don't know why I bought this. Probably because it was a Newbery Award book and it sounded interesting, but I've read a lot of Shannon Hale with my daughter because she writes the Princess in Black series now. So I've actually read quite a bit of Shannon Hale's work, but I don't think I had when I picked this one up. So I'm excited about reading this. I'm gonna do a little work to look and see if this is one I can actually read with my daughter. We've been reading The Wizard of Oz lately, a chapter a night, so this might be one I try to sneak in to read as part of our nightly routine. The only thing I can see being a problem is there are absolutely no pictures in this book, and I'm not sure she's quite ready for that yet. She still likes books that have the occasional illustration, but we'll see. Maybe later this year I can sneak this one in for her. A Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan. This is another one I bought probably as a cover buy. This series looks really cool. It kind of gives me Emily Wilde vibes, so I'm hoping I love it just as much. Uprooted is another Naomi Novik. I guess it should have been in the pile of things from authors I've previously read, but I forgot about that until just now. I believe this one is sort of like a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I really like Naomi Novik's writing. I'm excited to read this one. Next is The House by the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This is another one I've seen all over BookTube. Looks really good. Seems like it's a nice found family story, which is something that's right off my alley. Can't wait to read it. Obviously can wait. I've owned that book for at least 3 years and I haven't read it, but you know what I mean. Next is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I swear I've read some V.E. Schwab before, but looking over Goodreads, I couldn't see anything I'd actually read, just a lot of books on my want to read list. So this might just be an author I've been circling around and haven't actually read anything of. So I'm excited to read this one. This is another one I've heard nothing but good things about from different booktubers and people I follow. I have this special Barnes & Noble edition and that I got for Christmas one year, and I'm looking forward to reading it and seeing what all the fuss is about. Next, I have The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware. Again, this is one I think I picked up because I saw it on someone's end of year list, or I saw it on a Goodreads list maybe. I think it was maybe in a Goodreads Choice Award one year. I can't remember. But Ruth Ware is an author I've now seen a lot of. I have several other Ruth Ware books I haven't read yet. My husband has read at least one or two. And I just was really interested in the synopsis of this book that I now remember very little of. I know it involved a tarot card reader, and it just sounded very interesting. So hopefully this one holds up to the hype in my head. I really like the cover though. It's a really nice cover. So I'm hoping this one lives up to the expectations in my heart. I know thrillers can be really hit or miss. Hoping this is a hit. So if you've been keeping count, and why would you? That's crazy. You'll know that we have now done 20 books. I mentioned one book I was slotting in for one of the ones I read, but that leaves us with 2 spots for books that I read from the original list and 3 additional ones because we are 3 years later. I just looked at my bookshelves really quickly and found 2 books to cover those 2 slots. A lot of this list, somewhat accidentally, are books my husband has already read that I haven't. So this feels like kind of the make it up to my husband, the books he's been wanting me to read so he can talk about them with me. Kind of like my apology list to try to finally get through some of these books so we can discuss them. And on that same vein, the 2 I picked are Battle of the Linguist Mages by Scotto Moore and House of Frank by Kay Sinclair. This one my husband bought for me as a gift. Then he read it before I did, and I know he really enjoyed it. There's a review of it on his channel. And then House of Frank is a book he read last year. It was one of his favorite books of the year, so I'm excited to read this one. This is one that Jason over at Easy Cat chose as the book in his Bindery Publishing imprint. So it's apparently found family, which is something I really enjoy. This one seems like it should be right up my alley, although it's probably going to make me cry. And then the last 3 books I chose were ones that I bought last year but hadn't read. So 3 of the books that I purchased last year. So if you've watched my haul video, you'll have seen them there. I looked for the 3 that I was most excited about that I wanted to prioritize. And I came away with Boys in the Valley, which I have, as you can tell by my swishy bookmark, already started. I'm about 75 pages in. I just finished part 1. It's good so far. I'm really interested in seeing where this one goes. I wasn't sure I was in the mood for spooky horror, and I've got a couple of complaints about the way the book is structured, but I am enjoying it so far. So hopefully we'll get this one done quick and I'll be able to check it off. Next, Impossible Creatures. This was a Christmas present. Then I believe I added it to my list again off of Jason from Easy Cat. He recommended this one in a wrap-up, and he sold it so well that I immediately added it to my list. It was also apparently the Barnes & Noble book of the year, so lots of people like this one. I love the color of the edges, so pretty. Everything I've heard has just made me excited about it. Can't wait to read it. And then lastly, I have the very last book I bought of 2024, which was Stars of Chaos, my very first Dawn May novel. I don't want this one to get lost in the pile and just sit there and never read this and start Dawn May. So I'm putting this one on the list to prioritize it in 2025. I am really excited about the steampunk aesthetic. Really looking forward to diving into this one. Hopefully we'll get to it really soon. So that's it. 25 books for 2025. Again, this is going to be more than 25 books if I read all of them, because there's at least 2 books I have to read a previous book to read the one on the list. And there are several books that have sequels that if I really enjoy the book I read, it might behoove me to just read the rest of the series that's out so that I don't run into this problem of reading a book and then not reading the rest of the series. It might be good for me to just go, no, I like this. Let's continue this ride. As long as I'm not feeling burnt out on the genre, let's keep going and finish the series. So we'll see. I'm, again, a little hesitant. I did only read 20 books last year, but I did also have a very large reading slump from about July to October. So that's about 4 months where I didn't really read anything. So even if I can just read one more book a month in there, that's about 24. That's a lot closer. So we'll see. And again, I know I'm going to want to mood read. I'm going to want to pick something else up off the shelf that sounds good. I'm going to see a book at a bookstore I want to buy and hopefully read and not just put it on my shelf immediately. So I know these won't be the only 25 books I read this year. I'll probably pick up something else. And I still have all those other books I bought in 2024 that I'm hoping to prioritize getting read so that I can stop this cycle of buying books and never reading them. It's a lot. It's too much to tackle at once, and I don't think I will. But I've got to start somewhere, and I'm trying to embrace good enough this year. Because if I try to be perfect, I just won't start. So we're trying to say, even if I only read 10 of these books, that's good enough. I read some of them. I got some books off my physical TBR, and some is better than none, and I've had some years where I read almost nothing. And we'd like to avoid that if possible. So, some is better than none. Good enough is good enough. Even if I don't read all 25 of these books, I'll be happy, as long as I do my best to make a dent. And as long as I'm reading something and enjoying what I read, if it isn't these 25 books, that's okay. I'm thinking about doing a vlog for these different books, maybe doing 5 at a time in a vlog, to kind of keep myself accountable and also give myself content for the channel. I may start, since I just finished part 1 of Boys in the Valley, I might do a quick update at some point. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. Seeing my thoughts on these books as I work my way through these 25 and 25. That might be the motivation it takes. I don't know if I'm going to have a lot of bookish goals this year because this already feels like a lot, and I'm not sure I want to pile too much more on my plate. But this feels like a good place to start, to hopefully start tackling some of that physical TBR and getting some of these books I should have read a long time ago checked off the TBR and into my read columns. That wraps it up for me. Like the video if you did. Subscribe to tell YouTube you want to see more of me for some reason. And leave a comment down below if any of these books are on your TBR or if you've read them. Which do you think I should prioritize in my reading? As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter. Bye! I really liked the first one. Oh no, this is the first one. Ah, I need to do it again. Let's just say we loved it all.